Is our current education system, designed for the industrial era, still relevant in our post-industrial world? A question that demands our attention. Our education system, as we know it, is a product of the Industrial Revolution. It was structured to produce obedient and punctual factory workers, capable of following orders and respecting the property rights of others. This model, often referred to as the factory school model, was efficient and standardized. It worked well in an era dominated by factory work, but does it still make sense today? In our rapidly evolving post-industrial society where technology and innovation are the new norm, can a system designed for a different age suffice? We're living in a world that demands more creativity, critical thinking, and adaptability than ever before. How can an education system designed to mold us into compliant cogs in an industrial machine meet the demands of the 21st century? It is time to delve into the history of our education system to understand its evolution and to question its relevance in our contemporary society. Our current education system has its roots in the 19th century Prussian model, a time when the world was rapidly shifting gears from an agrarian society to an industrial one. The winds of change were blowing, and they brought with them a new concept: state-provided, regimented education. In the land of Prussia, the birthplace of this modern education system, a unique experiment was taking place. For the first time in history, education was no longer a privilege of the elite, but a service provided by the state. This was a novel idea, a radical shift from traditional education that was typically home-based and flexible. Prussian schools became factories of learning, where children were placed in grades according to their age and moved through successive grades as they mastered the curriculum. But the question remains, why was this system designed this way? The answer lies in the needs of the industrial era. As industrialization spread, factory owners needed workers. Not just any workers, but those who were docile, agreeable, and would show up on time, do as they were told, and respect the property rights of others. The early industrial capitalists realized that to have such a workforce, they had to start molding minds from a young age. So they turned to schools. These institutions became more than just places for learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. They were turned into social conditioning centers, where children were taught to respect authority, follow orders, and value punctuality. This regimented system of education, efficient and impersonal as it was, proved to be highly successful in producing the kind of workforce the industrial era needed. The education system was thus tailored to suit the needs of the factories, rather than focusing on the individual needs of the learners. In essence, the birth of our modern education system can be traced back to the Industrial Revolution and the need for a compliant, literate workforce. Thus, our education system was born out of the needs of industrialization and not necessarily the needs of the individual learner. The Prussian factory-style schools soon spread across the Western world. This wave of educational reform was not by chance, but rather a calculated move by the industrialists of the time, who saw the immense value in a universally educated workforce. In the United States, United Kingdom, and elsewhere in Europe, industrialists led the charge to adopt this model of education. It was their influence and advocacy that played a significant role in the widespread implementation of factory-style schools. They were not just passive spectators, but active participants in shaping the future of education. They understood that a more educated workforce would not only be more productive, but would also be more compliant and adaptable, qualities that were highly desirable in the rapidly changing industrial landscape of the 19th century. Perhaps the most notable example of their commitment to universal education was the Elementary Education Act of 1870 in England. This landmark legislation made education universally available, marking a significant shift in societal attitudes towards education. It was no longer seen as a privilege reserved for the elite, but rather a right for every child. The act was a clear testament to the power and influence of the industrialists, who were among its biggest champions. But it was not just about creating a literate workforce. The factory school model was designed to instill certain values and behaviors in students: punctuality, obedience, respect for authority, that would make them more effective workers in the industrial setting. The assembly line nature of the education, with students moving through grades as they mastered the curriculum, mirrored the production lines of factories. The school was, in essence, a training ground for the factory. Industrialists recognized the value of an educated workforce, and so the factory-style school model became the norm. This model of education, born out of the needs of the Industrial Revolution, soon became the standard across the Western world. As we reflect on the evolution of our education system, it is important to remember the forces that shaped it and to consider whether this model still serves us in a post-industrial world. As we move further into the post-industrial era, our education system requires a bold rethinking. The demands of the modern world are vastly different from those of the Industrial Revolution. We're not preparing students for factory lines, but for an increasingly interconnected, technology-driven global society. It's time to question if the methods of the past, born out of an era of mass production and homogeneity, are still relevant in our dynamic, diverse, and digital age. The one-size-fits-all approach may have suited the Industrial Revolution, but today, it falls short in fostering creativity, critical thinking, and adaptability, skills essential in the 21st century. So, what might the future of education look like? Well, one possibility is more comprehensive adult education. As our world evolves, so does the nature of work. Jobs disappear, new ones emerge, and roles transform. This constant flux calls for lifelong learning, a continuous process of acquiring new skills and knowledge throughout one's career. Another potential change is regular retraining. With the rapid pace of technological advancements and industry shifts, the skills and knowledge we acquire today might be obsolete tomorrow. Regular retraining could ensure that everyone, regardless of their age or stage in their career, remains competitive and relevant in the job market. Then there's the integration of technology. As digital natives, today's students are more than capable of leveraging technology for learning. From virtual classrooms to AI tutors, technology can provide personalized learning experiences tailored to each student's needs and pace. It's about moving away from the sage-on-the-stage model to a guide-on-the-side approach, where educators facilitate learning rather than dictate it. These are just a few possibilities, and the exact path forward is yet to be defined. But one thing is certain: our education system must evolve to keep pace with the rapidly changing world. The future of our society depends on our ability to adapt and learn, and so does the future of education. Today's captains of industry seem more hands-off when it comes to education. They sit comfortably in their glass towers, often lamenting the lack of skills among today's workforce. Yet they seem less inclined to roll up their sleeves and dive into the thick of educational reform, unlike their industrial forebears. In the early days of industrialization, factory owners understood the necessity of an educated workforce. They knew that the success of their factories, and indeed the success of the Industrial Revolution, hinged on having workers who were literate, punctual, and able to follow instructions. They were not content to sit by and hope that such workers would magically appear. Instead, they became champions of education, advocating for reforms and policies that would ensure a steady supply of educated workers. Fast forward to today, and it is a different story. While modern industrial leaders are quick to complain about skill shortages, they are less inclined to take action. They may sponsor a scholarship here or a training program there, but these are often band-aid solutions that do not address the root of the problem. The education system, as it stands, is not adequately preparing students for the realities of the modern workforce. It is still largely based on the factory model of education, which was designed for a different era and a different set of needs. Despite this, we do not see the same level of involvement from today's industrial leaders. They seem content to let others, be it the government or the schools themselves, handle the issue. But is this the best approach? The world is changing at a rapid pace. Jobs that exist today may be obsolete tomorrow, and new jobs that we cannot even imagine will take their place. If we want to ensure that our workforce is prepared for these changes, we need a bold, innovative approach to education. And who better to lead this charge than the people who are at the forefront of these changes, the leaders of industry? It is time for them to step out of their glass towers and into the classrooms. It is time for them to engage with educators, students, and policymakers to ensure that our education system is fit for purpose. It might be time for them to step up and take a more active role in shaping our education system. The change we need in our education system won't happen without you. As we've seen, the education system we know today was designed for a different era. It was created for the industrial age where compliance and uniformity were key, but we're no longer in that age. We're in a world that's rapidly changing, a world where creativity, critical thinking, and adaptability are paramount. We all have a role to play in advocating for an education system that's relevant and effective for our time. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a student, or simply someone who cares about the future of our society, your voice matters. Let's challenge the status quo. Let's question if the traditional, one-size-fits-all approach to education is still the best way forward. We need to create an education system that prepares our learners for the future, not the past. A system that values individuality and fosters a lifelong love for learning. It's time to rethink our education system. It's time to prepare our learners for the future, not the past.